Welcome to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about the program by visiting our website. Sorry, our technology is all over the place because everything breaks every day, and now I'll pick it up. You can learn more about the program by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast and pick up all of our information there on our partnering TV, radio, and streaming networks across the state of Michigan, and find all of our programs on demand. Today, we'll be talking about a number of different topics of interest and importance to Michiganders like you, with individuals from all across the Great Lakes state. Let's begin with what's making headlines on our website at civiccentertv.com on our local news page. Our top story comes from Jonathan Osting and Lauren Gibbons at Bridge, Michigan. Poll challengers are always a staple at the polls on Election Day, but following the controversy surrounding challengers in the 2020 election cycle, some new rules are now in place here in Michigan. Per a rule through the Michigan State Supreme Court on Thursday, clerks are now allowed to prohibit challengers from bringing cell phones into absentee ballot counting rooms and to limit their ability to speak directly with election workers in process on Election Day. Justices in this ruling suspended a lower court ruling that blocked such provisions earlier on in this cycle, which was supported by Republicans who sued, saying these rules restricted the electorate's right to challenge the vote tallies. Democratic Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who is up for re-election on November 8th, called the ruling a, quote, rightful balance providing transparency while protecting voters from poll workers from disruptions and intimidation, and closed quote. Others are disappointed in the high court ruling and, quite frankly, are upset about the ruling, arguing that it is restrictive in the right to challenge the results of vote tallies and certain ballots at the polls. Southfield attorney Ann Howard, representing GOP challengers, said that the ruling will, quote, effectively neuter, and closed quote, these rights in this election, and quote, we're going to be heading into an election with poll challengers' rights being severed, and closed quote. Also making headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page from Lily Altavina at the Detroit Free Press. The Free Press is doing its part to show support for the Oxford community as we approach 1 year since the hallowed day in which a student opened fire at Oxford High School, killing 4 students and injuring several other students, as well as educators and staff. The Free Press team said, quote, we would like to collect messages of hope from you, Michiganders, from across the state as a show of solidarity and support for Oxford. Oxford community members are also encouraged to leave messages to their community or messages remembering the victims. They will share these messages on their website, freep.com, and on the podcast as well, closer to the end of November, and close quote. In this article, there is a Google form that is there for you to fill out these messages of hope and encouragement for the Oxford community and send them through and support them as we approach the 1 year anniversary of the unfortunate day, November 30th, 2021. At Oxford High School. Click through this article that will take you to the Detroit Free Press's website and their specific page for this article from Lily Altavina. And at the bottom of that article is that Google form you can fill out to send your messages to Oxford and their community. Finally, making headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page from Mark Torregrossa at MLive. Leaf raking alert. We've got some serious winds coming in this weekend, so you may want to hold off on piling up those leaves, or you might be doing some of that yard work more than one time. Saturday forecasts are showing winds upwards of 45 to 55 miles per hour over much of lower Michigan. Expect brief gusts and windy periods spanning from about 1 to 2 hours at a time. From the Holland area out west to northern lower peninsula, winds could be in the 50 mile per hour range between 2 and 8 p.m. on Saturday. Grand Rapids can also expect about 50 mile per hour winds, with southeast Michigan and the lower peninsula coming up at about 45 miles per hour. You can see the full article by clicking through on our local news page for additional forecast information, as well as some very helpful and detailed maps from Mark Torregrossa and the team at MLive. All those headlines on our website today at CivicCenterTV.com on our local news page, along with helpful links to COVID-19 updates from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great show ahead on this Friday edition of the Megacast. Up next, we'll talk cybersecurity and protecting your small business online with Single Point IT's Tim Nakapaahu. This is the Megacast.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID. We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Take a look back in time and recollect local history at this month's Sylvan Story presentation. Learn about Sylvan Lake's illustrious past from the lovely Helen Jane Peters as she discusses everything she can about Whitfield School's teacher and principal, Mr. Glenn Husted, and the letters he'd write to soldiers fighting in World War II. Sylvan Story. Drop by at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, November 10th at the Sylvan Lake Community Center.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine. I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find more information on our partnering stations all across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now on the program are a couple of individuals from a local company that has expertise in IT as well as cybersecurity for your local business as we approach the holiday season, the shopping season, and often around this time of the year, people take their business back home with them. And even after 2 years of COVID-19 and precautions being taken, a lot of people are doing their work from home anyway. How do you protect your business, and how do you as an individual protect your own cybersecurity at home when you're doing work and taking in outside information as well? Joining us now is Tim Nakapaahu, owner and operator of Single Point IT, along with the president of the company too, and a surprise, Eric Connelly, also joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. Thank you both for being with us today.
How are you doing?
Appreciate having both of you on. Tim, let's start with you. Just tell us a little bit about Single Point and the services that you provide to businesses all across the local area.
Yes, Eric and I are the owners of Single Point Technology. We've been in the IT industry for a combined total of about 40 years now. We've been doing business in the Oakland County for about the last 15 years. Eric was previously in the automotive industry. I myself was installing infrastructure systems across the US for major corporations, but we are an MSSP, so we're a managed security service provider. So we focus on bringing an IT service for a fixed value, we focus on bringing a maximum value for your fixed IT budget. But we do offer a complete managed service for everything from the ground up.
Go ahead, Eric.
So our whole idea is to, manage, secure, and support anything that touches the network, even if it's not something that we provided. As we get into a little bit more of a talk on the cybersecurity piece of it, it's not just the computer piece of it anymore, because everything runs software, everything's a target, everything's an entry point. So, we have to look at it from a top-down view, even if it's not something that you would normally think could be a concern in relating to security.
And in terms of what companies can do or what steps they should be taking on a IT standpoint and from a cybersecurity standpoint, especially in-house, let's start with that. What sort of steps should they be taking in the modern age to fortify their security at their physical locations, at their brick and mortar locations, to ensure that they are much less likely to become a victim of a cyber attack or other security breaches?
Yeah, so we look at security breaking down into 4 pieces. One of them is what I just touched on, which is the scope. So understanding what every single entry point is, because generally the one you miss is the one that's going to end up getting you, and making sure you understand that scope. A very simple example is a manufacturing company could have a piece of equipment on the shop floor that makes parts for them. People think of that as a dedicated piece of equipment, but it still runs software. It still is connected to a network. And even though it's not something that you may think of as being a risk or a risk standpoint from an entry point, it is. So just understanding everything that touches your network, everything that's connected to it. If people are bringing in equipment from home, the whole bring your own device is a huge thing now. Understanding what they're bringing in, because, a big part of it when you touch on business versus personal, a lot of these attacks now are social in nature. So they will find out information about somebody from a personal standpoint. And then with LinkedIn and Facebook and everything else, it's not very difficult to figure out where somebody works. And that's usually the beginning of an entry point into a business. The second part is what everybody normally focuses on, which is prevention, keeping your updates up to date, antivirus software, firewall configuration. A big one is restricting outside access to bare necessities. We've had some customers in the past that, everybody gets, remote access. Well, does everybody need remote access? Because a lot of times it's the people that have it but don't use it then become part of the target because it's not something they pay attention to. And then the absolute biggest piece out of the 4 is education. Your biggest risk is your user. There's no amount of hardware, software, or money you will spend that will stop a user from making a mistake. Computers work on trust relationships. So when somebody gets an email that contains ransomware or a virus, they open it up and it asks them a question. Do they want to do this or not? Once they hit yes, they've told the computer to trust whatever that software does, and nothing is going to stop it from that standpoint out. And that's really where we try to focus, is on the educational piece of it. Because again, you can put as much in as you want from a technology standpoint, but someone coming down, sitting down and pushing that button still puts you in the same risk as everybody else. And then lastly is remediation. So again, regardless of the amount of security you put in place, you have to be prepared for the event. And how do you remediate and how do you reduce your downtime? Ransomware is the thing that's on everybody's mind now. And 4 or 5 years ago, when a ransomware attack happened, the option was you unplugged everything because you didn't know where it came from. You don't know who did it. You don't know how it started. And since it's such a pervasive and invasive attack, the only option is just to unplug everything, plug each piece in one at a time until you find out where that attack came from. And so the remediation time, even now that we have the ability to mitigate these attacks, slow them down, and not bring the business down to a complete halt, having a remediation plan, because your second biggest risk beyond the ransomware attack itself is the downtime that it causes. And everybody thinks of that downtime from the standpoint, I lost all my information. Well, the second part of the downtime is how long does it take it to fix it, get everything back up and running, and find out where the problem came from so we can make sure it doesn't happen again.
We hear so often too about companies, especially small business nowadays, that are becoming more fruitful targets, or more interesting targets is probably a better way to put it, for hackers, and particularly for ransomware attacks too. What about small businesses makes them such an interesting target for these hackers to go after, and what should these businesses be doing to prepare themselves for the potential of a ransomware attack, which is much higher now than it ever has been in the past, on top of those prevention methods that you already have spoken about, Tim and Eric?
So part of it is automation. There are automated tools that go out and look for vulnerabilities in systems. So, the idea always is there's somebody sitting behind their computer going out and trying to find these things and actively working as a person. A lot of times they have computers set up. They just go out and they look for vulnerabilities that are out there. You'll hear a lot about Internet of Things devices, IoT devices getting hacked. So you buy a camera, or you buy something like for your home, you don't change the username and password for it. It's exposed to the internet. They will then use that device to become they call it a bot, to go out and find other devices that they can get into. So, automation now becomes, it doesn't matter how big or how small you are. If you have a device connected to the internet, they can go out and find out if there's a vulnerability. And, the other thing is, this is run like a business. So they get a report of everybody who's vulnerable for the day, and they do some investigation, they do some work, determine how good of a target it is, and then that's how they go after them. How much more they go after them from an actual work standpoint versus continuing to just do some type of automated attack. And again, the other part of it is the social aspect of it. A lot of these attacks are not very technological. They're not very high tech. They're emails that are sent to somebody, trying to get somebody to create a response to the email that's sent, or they're twofold in the fact that somebody's had a compromise with their personal information at home. And then again, most people, the number's around 90%, they use almost the same password or a very close variation of the same password through their entire life. So the password they use for their email and their computer at work is very close to the password they use for their Facebook and Instagram and things like that. Those are a lot easier targets because the home computer is not protected as well. So again, I have a username, I have a password, which I am pretty sure is going to be somewhat close to what they're using at work. And then again, through social media, I can find out where they work, determine how good of a target is, and then be able to go after them from that. So again, that all comes back down to the educational piece of it, because people have to understand what they're clicking on, things to look for, how to determine whether an email could be phishing, whether it's real or not. That's why we push the educational piece so much. And then the second part is just a lack of a secure infrastructure. So we will talk to most people, and again, they will look at it from the preventative standpoint. Oh, I have antivirus, I have a firewall, I have this, and I keep my updates up to date. There is a lot more to it to secure the infrastructure than just those pieces. So they have an idea that they're secure, so they think that they've done enough, and that creates complacency. And that's how they start to get in.
More information and to get in contact with Eric and Tim from SinglePoint, you can visit their website, singlepointit.com, singlepointit.com, or call them 248-550-0820, 248-550-0820. Before we let you go, Tim, I want to go back to you and just ask, many companies, they may have their own internal IT department or IT expert, but for those that maybe aren't able to have those resources on site or on hand, on call for their company, why should they be consulting or consider consulting with a company like yours to provide these services for them, as well as some security interventions and solutions?
Well, that's a great question. So obviously there's many people trying to offer technical services today, but what we try to do is we also try to lend not only a more personalized approach, but most of our clients and our businesses that we work with, they know all of our team on a first name basis. So what that does is going to streamline the service you get, and it's going to build more of a trust factor when it comes to these secure issues that you're having.
More information again, singlepointit.com, and to get in contact with them. Tim, Eric, thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. We will take a break now on the Megacast. On the other side, it's our weekly market talk with Michael Greiner from Oakland University. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV, and find our full episodes and each individual interview on demand so you can watch the Megacast on your time, at your pace, and whatever topics of interest are most important to you. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now on the Megacast for our weekly look into the economy and news that will be affecting both your work and your pocketbook as well. Michael Greiner from Oakland University joins us once again on the Megacast. Michael, thanks for being with us today.
Great to be back, Tyler. How are you today?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you with us as once again, it seems like we're going right back around the spinning wheel again. The Federal Reserve raising interest rates once again by 0.75%. This is an unprecedented time now, the fourth consecutive raising of federal interest rates. When is this projected to be potentially the last one? You know, we talked the last couple of times and you said, this is the second one, we're expecting a third, we're expecting a fourth. Last time around, it was the third time, and we talked about this and you said, yeah, expect a fourth, potentially even a fifth. Where is the forecast right now in terms of how many more of these interest rate rises we could be seeing from the Fed?
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm afraid we're probably not done with it. In fact, that's the big message that we got from Chairman Jerome Powell's announcement. In part, what he was doing was reacting to the markets, where there's kind of this exuberance that they get each time that we get close to one of the interest rate announcements. And there's kind of this sense that, oh, you know, maybe things will start to slow down. Maybe there'll be some kind of indication that we're going to have less increases coming forward. But Jerome Powell really threw cold water on that and said very clearly that, you know, stop paying attention to how fast they're increasing. We're going to go up. We're going to keep going up until we start to get control of inflation. He said that, in fact, what we do is we've expected that the terminal rates, the rate that we expect to reach with it has gone up. He didn't say how high it's gone up. He didn't say how they're going to calculate how high it should go. So that kind of leaves a bit of uncertainty again that the markets are going to kind of get nervous about. But by the same token, it made it clear that at least he does not see any end coming in sight anytime soon. Now, this is kind of a disappointment to the markets because, of course, they looked at what happened in Canada, where they slowed down their interest rate increases. And there were also a number of the members of the Fed Board of Governors, as we discussed before, who've been indicating that, you know, hey, we need to be careful about this because we don't want to throw the economy into too big of a recession to deal with inflation. But Jerome Powell was unmoved in that. He made it very clear to the markets that expect higher rates, and indeed they are. So we'll see what happens with that.
And we had an article on our website on our local news page earlier on in the week from Bridge, Michigan, that talked about the impact that this raise in the interest rates is having on the housing market, in particular, higher costs. So then this, they got to lower the cost of the homes in order to make them worthwhile to sell to individuals on the market. Certainly more of a buyer's market. But how is this affecting the labor market? Because as prices increase, cost of living increases, and so then you have a situation where you want to be competitive in the job market and bring in those best candidates, but they're often going to be asking for a lot more money than maybe you've budgeted to pay for those certain positions. So how is that affecting labor at this time?
Yeah, you're right about that. And that's kind of the frustration I think that the Fed has been dealing with, which is again, this morning, we got more job figures. And once again, they far outstripped what the expectations were. We were expecting about 206,000 jobs added to the economy in October. And as it turns out, we ended up with 261,000. So again, a substantial increase over what expectations were. What's more is that there were some positive signs in terms of the market slowing down a little bit, in terms of the amount, the labor participation rate went down slightly, which is the number of people who are actually in the job market or looking for work. The unemployment rate went up just slightly, which again, you want to see that start to go up a little bit to tame inflation. But the truth of the matter is, what we're still seeing is a very competitive job market where there are many, many more job openings available than there are people looking for work. And what we've seen is, even with some of the tech giants, for example, announcing that they're going to have some layoffs, like, for example, Lyft announced that they're going to have some layoffs. Amazon, who you'd think would be hiring like crazy right now with the holiday season coming right now, has said that they're actually going to have a hiring freeze. Despite those things, you still see that there are many more jobs out there than people looking, and that really does create upward pressure on wages, which is, again, what we've seen. So that's kind of the concern that the Fed has, which is, long as there is this upward pressure on wages, it makes it harder to get control of inflation, both because, on the one hand, people have more money to spend, so they're willing to pay more for the goods and services that they're going to buy, but also then the employers need to spend more to get the workers, and then they want to pass on those costs to the employees. So it ends up being kind of a cycle here that gets hard to get control of.
We're joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University on today's edition of the Megacast. Of course, you can learn more information about Oakland University programs and their business school by visiting oakland.edu. That's oakland.edu for all of that information. We've talked about recently companies across industries trying to cut costs, or at least consolidate some of those costs by joining forces with other companies. That's now affecting the publishing industry. Actually, the court blocked what was a proposed merger, between Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House recently, and that would have been a $2 billion merger. The argument being out of favor for that merger, that it would very negatively affect the leverage that authors would have in those negotiations with these publishers. Tell us about that and what ultimately led to these two publishing giants that are suffering higher costs, and certainly the impact of inflation and the market at this time not being allowed to merge, which was something we saw earlier on being a theme with the airline industry.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, going to go down as being a very significant decision in many respects, because in the past, the way that courts have looked at mergers has been, what's going to be the impact on consumers? And generally speaking, what's been amazing is that most of these mergers, most of the consolidation in these industries has actually, generally speaking, been pretty positive for consumers. Like, take a look, for example, speaking of the book industry, at Amazon. Generally speaking, Amazon right now is practically a monopoly in the book selling industry. But yet, for most consumers, we've really benefited from it. There has been lower prices. Who here hasn't ordered something on Amazon and been able to immediately download it or get it delivered that day sometimes from Amazon? I mean, it's wonderful. And generally speaking, people are very happy with some of these larger companies that have really focused on trying to deliver benefits to the consumers. But it has to cut somewhere, though. There has to be some impact that's felt. And the place that's being felt, actually, is in the sellers of goods and services to those large companies, rather than what's called a monopoly, where you have one large company selling to lots of consumers. What you've got is what's called a monopsony, with one large company buying from lots of sellers. And and that's exactly what the judge found in this case, which is that because of the fact that you'd have fewer large publishing companies, which basically this would take us from 5 large publishing companies down to 4, then you'd have a situation where they'd be able to go to the authors and say to them, "Hey, we're not willing to pay so much for your book because there aren't so many people competing over this." And we saw this, for example, with Amazon, where while Amazon has delivered great benefits to the consumers, to people who are sellers to Amazon, it's been really a hardship where they've seen that the money that they're able to make off of Amazon has been severely cut, and it's become much harder for companies to make money by selling through Amazon. And in fact, that's the point that these publishers are making, which is that basically they're dealing with this monopoly with Amazon, who's saying to the publishers, "Hey, we're not going to pay this much money for the books that you're selling." And a couple times where some of the publishers have tried to rebel against it, Amazon has so much market power that they've been able to prevail and basically push down the costs that they're paying to these publishers. So as a result of it, the publishers are saying, "Look, we need to be able to create a level playing field here where we're able to essentially bargain on equal basis with Amazon." But yet, by the same token, what that does is creates a situation kind of downstream then for the authors who are saying, well, then it creates a situation where we don't have any bargaining power. And so that's kind of the vicious cycle, I think, that the antitrust enforcers have been trying to deal with. And this, frankly, has been a priority, I think, for the Biden administration. You know, President Biden has raised this a number of times. There have been calls for this, including by many economists for quite some time, that really there's this concern with this increase in consolidation we have in the American economy, that what it does is it leads to less dynamism in the economy, less innovation, less investment, less exciting new things happening. And there's actually been evidence that in our economy, with fewer job starts, for example, leading up to the pandemic, less new businesses starting up. And so as a result of that, there's definitely this move to try to address it. But the problem is that we've kind of created so much consolidation already that each of these arguments for consolidation seem to make a lot of sense. Like the publishers, they've got a good argument. Hey, we're trying to deal with Amazon, but yet the excuse me, the authors are saying, hey, we need to stop this. And at some point, it just has to stop and kind of start to be undone. And so I actually applaud the judge on this. We'll see if this ruling stands, because again, this typically has not been the approach that the courts have taken to addressing antitrust cases. But it may not matter anyway, because as it turns out, there's a deadline for Penguin Random House to finalize this deal, and they're coming up on that deadline. And as a result of that, even though they've said they're going to appeal, it might not matter because it may get them past the deadline anyway. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. But I think that it's a very strong signal that maybe there's a slight change that's starting to happen now in the courts, where they're starting to consider the fact that these consolidated industries have resulted in sellers really being hurt, not just consumers.
We're joined by Michael Greiner, Assistant Professor of Management at Oakland University's School of Business Administration, on today's edition of the Megacast. More program information from Oakland University and School of Business Administration can be found at oakland.edu. That's oakland.edu for all of Oakland's programs and more information from the university. Michael, lastly, we've heard so much over the last several months with inflation, with the state of the market, especially about the rise in gas prices. Gas prices are significantly higher. They keep going up. They keep going up. Now we're hearing that they're going back down, but they're still almost $1, and in some places well over $1 over where they were priced a year ago. That being said, oil companies across the board are making record profits. And this week, President Biden came out arguing for some counteraction against that in the form of a windfall profits tax and tax. We also know that the United Kingdom considering similar actions against the oil companies. Tell us about A, what's the motivation behind that strategy from the government? And B, if that is to be the case and that is to be enacted against these companies, how could it affect regular Michiganders at the pump?
Great question, and I think the first answer to the part of your question about what's behind it is I think it's politics. I was just reading an article the other day about how the chief of staff to the president right now is obsessed with the price of gas, and it's the first thing that he checks every day. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence that President Biden's favorability rating is tied almost directly to the gas prices, which seems kind of ironic given the fact that the reality is the federal government actually has relatively little control over the price of gas. The price of gas is set on a global market where basically you've got a certain amount of oil that is available, you've got a certain amount of oil that's demanded, and there's kind of this market where you have the buyers and sellers negotiating to figure out how much they're going to pay for it. And it's purely based upon economics 101 principles of supply and demand. Well, as it turns out, we have relatively high demand because we've been coming out of the pandemic and people are driving again. So that's increased demand. At the same time, as supply has come down for a couple of reasons. You have number one, the fact that we have this war going on in Ukraine, and Russia, of course, is a major supplier of oil, although not necessarily a big supplier of oil to the United States or to the UK for that matter, but they are a supplier to the world. And again, it's a global market where, oil prices here in the United States are based as much upon what's going on in India or China as they're based upon what's going on here in the United States. So you can't look at it just within that context. Now, the oil companies make the point, and they're quite right about this, that they have very little control of oil prices. And as a result, they shouldn't be penalized for the fact that they're making a lot of money now, because back during the recession that we had as a result of the COVID pandemic, when everybody stopped driving and oil prices basically dropped through the floor, they lost a lot of money. And that's the second reason right now that we have lower supply, which is that here in the United States, a lot of the oil companies took a bath during the pandemic, losing literally billions of dollars. And a lot of the smaller oil companies actually went out of business as a result of that. There's a lot of argument in some of these congressional races about fracking and should it be done. Well, the reality is there's not a lot of fracking going on anyway, because of the fact that so many of these frackers lost their shirts during the pandemic, so they don't want to invest in that again. Now, the concern that I think is legitimate here, though, with the oil companies is that if they're making profits, they should be reinvesting then in trying to create more exploration or invest in new alternative technologies or do something with the money that's going to benefit the economy overall in terms of our energy future. And we saw a great example of this with Shell, which just announced a massive profit of $9.5 billion. That's double what it earned in the same quarter last year. Unbelievably, though, it's actually down from what they earned the prior quarter, just giving you an idea of how much money they're making right now as a result of these higher oil prices. But at the same time, what are they going to do with this money? Are they going to invest it in new drilling and new exploration and new pipelines? No. What they're going to do is that they're basically going to give it to their shareholders in the form of dividends and in the form of stock buybacks. Now, obviously, I'm all about encouraging investment, and it's great that shareholders are being treated well. But that I think is really what sticks in the craw of a lot of people when they see that these companies are making so much money, and there is this kind of reduction in supply out there. And yet they're not doing anything to address supply when they could be doing something with all this money that they're making. And instead, they're basically just returning money to the shareholders. So I would rather see personally, rather than something that's a tax on windfall profits, I would rather see something that addresses more the longer term issue that we've seen here in the United States about all the money that's spent on stock buybacks. And in fact, there are some proposals out there to try to address that, because that's one way that I think companies have really been able to drive their stock prices higher without investing in anything meaningful that actually helps the economy. And I think the more that we can shift businesses to actually investing in meaningful investments, that would be something that would benefit our economy quite a bit in the long run.
Something's happening in the market. We'll certainly be hearing a lot about it from Michael Greiner each and every Friday here on the Megacast. Michael, thank you for joining us again.
Great to be here. Have a great weekend, Tyler.
you as well. We'll take a break on the Megacast. On the other side, we'll talk to one of over 320 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. This one in particular that focuses on support for mental health for our young people right here in Michigan. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Take a look back in time and recollect local history at this month's Sylvan Story presentation. Learn about Sylvan Lake's illustrious past from the lovely Helen Jane Peters as she discusses everything she can about Whitfield School's teacher and principal, Mr. Glenn Husted, and the letters he'd write to soldiers fighting in World War II. Sylvan Story. Drop by at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, November 10th at the Sylvan Lake Community Center.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Each and every week, we speak to multiple charities from Share Detroit that are supported on their platform at sharedetroit.com about all the sharedetroit.org, my apologies, but all the great things they're doing to support a number of different people in our communities. Joining us now is one organization that's working to strengthen mental health resources for young people all across this our local area. Karla Truxall is the founder of SPN Survivors and joins us now on the Megacast. Karla, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. First of all, just give us a little bit of a background and tell us about the mission of SPN Survivors.
Well, our mission is to engage and equip communities to strengthen mental health, to prevent suicide among teens and young adults. And how we got here is because my husband and I lost our nephew to suicide back in 2010. And his death ripped a hole through my heart and shattered my world. And it was a very traumatic loss for me. And I was not okay. And within a couple months, I knew that that I needed help, that I needed something, but I didn't know what that was called, who to ask, where to turn. I remember doing a half-hearted Google search, but I didn't even know what words to use. So unfortunately, that led to my suffering in silence for 2 years until a TV show of all things, Supernatural, and a convention more specifically that helped open my eyes that I needed counseling. And out of that journey, my husband and I realized we needed to take our loss and pay it forward to help others. So that's how SPN Survivors got started. My husband and I thought we were just building a website to shine a spotlight on resources. We had no idea we were starting a nonprofit, but thanks to the TV show and the fandom of Supernatural, they they had other ideas. Because I had reached out to the company that puts on the conventions and asked if I could have a table in the vendor's room. I said, I don't have a thing to sell. I just have a conversation I want to start. And I did that in March of 2015. And I had no idea that Jared Padalecki, one of the lead actors of Supernatural, was launching an Always Keep Fighting campaign. And that happened 10 days before that convention that I had that first table at. And so I had no idea he was doing that. He had no idea there was going to be a mental health presence there. And the energy in the room that weekend was incredible. And what we realized is that there are people suffering in silence all around us. And you just don't know it because you're not talking about it. And our table gave people permission to talk about things they normally don't talk about. It was a safe space to open up. And it just really opened our eyes to the need that was out there. And so when we went home, I remember telling my husband, we got to get registered. We got to get legit. This is going places, because the fandom was just like, yes, please. So we got the advice to take a year to figure out what it is we wanted to do. So we started out as a business charity and then became a nonprofit in April of 2016.
And so where did that go from that day in 2015 you were mentioning and all those conversations you had with fans at that convention and just on mental health and then that 1 year of thinking over and deciding where you're going to go with this with SPN Survivors, where did that ultimately lead you in terms of the resources that you're continuing to provide, but also those services that are connecting individuals to strengthen mental health at a community grassroots level?
I have the fans to thank for all of this. We've let everything kind of grow and develop organically. So after that first convention, um, I got the idea that we needed to come up with something tangible that people could, because we use our senses to self-soothe. So we wanted something tangible, something that was visual, something that you could hold to help you during your struggles. And we came up with stuffed animals. We called them battle buddies. And moose and squirrel are a given because those are reference to the characters in the show. And then we've developed 5 other ones around that. But when we first introduced those, the fandom is full of teachers and mental health professionals, and they took those animals, they took them to work and used them with their students and with their clients, and then gave us feedback on um, how that was working, the impact they were having, and that gave us the idea then to create comfort kits. So we started reaching out to the social workers and hospital ERs and schools and other places, and developed a comfort kit to support people who are struggling. So that's one of the resources that we provide. And then the fact that I had to work so hard to find the help that I needed, we will always be shining a spotlight on the other nonprofits that are out there, the other organizations that are there to support people. So we have 4x6 cards that we have one for Wayne County, we have one for Oakland County, we have one for the Lansing area, and then we have a nationwide one. But all of that has come to life because of those conversations that we have when we go out in the community, whether it's a table at a fandom convention or anywhere locally. We take all that information that we learn from talking to people and find ways to pay it forward to help others.
You can find more information by visiting spnsurvivors.org, spnsurvivors.org, or by going to sharedetroit.org, going to the Find a Nonprofit section and just searching for SPN Survivors. We're joined on the Megacast today by the founder of SPN Survivors, Karla Truxall, on today's program. And Karla, I want to go over another great effort that you're doing. It's called the AKF Squad. Tell us about the AKF Squad. It's one of the many different initiatives that has been undertaken by your organization, and give us a little bit of a background on this particular one.
So that the AKF Squad we realized early on that there was a gap in education, I guess, that a lot of people use the terms mental health and mental illness interchangeably, and they're not the same. So we realized there needed to be an education component, and we started out the AKF Squad being that education piece. But then somewhere in there, we realized our battle buddies, they had people really connected with those. And so they became our messengers of mental health. And once we got the idea to bring those to life, the stuffed animals to life through illustration and give them names and occupations and assigned them a healthy coping skill and a building block, they have become the AKF Squad. So the AKF Squad has kind of developed organically and shifted a little bit over the last few years. But we are creating card sets. It's kind of for the animals. It's kind of like a Pokemon meets baseball card. So we've created a card set introducing those to create simple, easy to understand language for parents to use with kids, teachers with students, or therapists with client using the animals. And then we've created a card set for the building blocks. And then we're working on the card set for the coping skills, which we're using music as the theme for that. So the AKF Squad is in my opinion, a really cool creative endeavor that we're using. And we have a lot of people who are excited about what we're creating because we're taking that same content and creating a mental health coloring book with it as well. And we're looking forward to getting that all done and out there so we can share it with everyone.
It's important too to have that educational element because there are so many different ways that people can suffer from different mental health issues, so many different mental illnesses also that can affect people in a number of different ways. And sometimes that the education is not only important to recognize these sorts of issues that may be present in somebody else, or recognize somebody else may be suffering in silence, as you had mentioned earlier on. It's also important so that people can look internally as well and take that self inventory, and maybe come to the realization that maybe they need to have some of these conversations and seek some help themselves. So it's really important that we have those sorts of resources. SPNsurvivors.org is the website for more information. And Karla, we've got a couple more minutes with you, but before I let you go, what is one thing, or what are a couple things that you really wish people knew, or had more knowledge about mental health, and about ways that they can not only look internally but also externally to others and help people in their community?
Well, the first piece is understanding what mental health is. Like I said, the terms mental health and mental illness get used interchangeably a lot. And so we like to point out that just like physical health is not the same as physical illness, you do things every day to take care of your physical health to avoid having physical illnesses, and the same can be done for your mental health. So we have a definition that we landed on for what mental health is. And so this is one of our things that we try to communicate with people everywhere we go. And that is that mental health affects how you feel, how you think, and how you behave as you cope with life. It determines how you handle stress, how you relate to others, how you make choices and perform at work, at school. So in a nutshell, mental health is everyday living. And that's become one of our taglines, is that everyone has mental health. You can't go through a day without it impacting your mental health. And so just having that basic understanding, and then having the tools to understand what you can do to better manage your mental health. Because I talk with my hands a lot. So we always say, if this is crisis over here, there's so much we can do way back here to make a difference so people don't get to crisis. And we really want to focus on those early stages to make a difference there.
More information, spnsurvivors.org, as well as ways you can get involved and support them in all their efforts throughout our local area. Karla, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
One more time, that's sharedetroit.org or spnsurvivors.org to go directly to their website and learn more information. That is going to do it for this week's editions of the Megacast. As always, you can keep up to date with us, find all the places that we're airing on TV, radio, and on the web in your local area, and find our full episodes and each individual interview on demand as well. CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. Big thank you to our crew, Calvin Brown and Jared Clark at the studio of My Michigan TV, for making this program possible each and every day, to you for joining us all throughout the week. That's it for today's program. We'll return soon with a new episode.